Welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrew Morris. I'm Director of HDR UK. And firstly, before we get going, a huge thank you for supporting today. I think we've had a great day of talks, but we really have saved the best to the last because we're very privileged to have Amy Abernethy here, who is the Principal Deputy Commissioner at the FDA and also chairs our International Advisory Board for HDR UK. And the format of this is an informal chat between Amy and myself. And I'll be asking Amy questions about how will data and technology influence the future of clinical and regulatory science. So it's a very forward-looking talk. And a little about Amy. So first of all, she's a doctor, an oncologist, was the Chief Scientific Officer and SVP at Flatiron, which was a oncology data science company. For the last few years, she has been the Principal Deputy Commissioner at the FDA, with a major focus on data and technology and how that will be embedded within regulation. In terms of training, she's been to Duke, University of Pennsylvania and Australia, but I know why she's interested in the UK, because with the surname like Abernethy, I actually live in Perth, Scotland, and Abernethy is a village 8 miles from here. And you will know that in the 11th century, it was the political center of the kingdom of the Picts. So, and it was actually in 1072 when the Treaty of Abernethy was signed between William the Conqueror and Malcolm III of Scotland. And basically, Malcolm, the King of Scotland, agreed that William I would be the feudal overlord of Scotland in exchange for a lot of land in Cumbria. So Amy, you're clearly well embedded within the history of the UK. We can't offer you any land, but we'll offer you great hospitality. So you're very welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me today. You know, I've been to Abernethy Tower and had my tour around the library and the museum.
So there we go. So there should be a plaque. So what I suggest is that we go on to speaker view, and I'll just ask 1 or 2 questions. And I would encourage colleagues to put questions in the Q&A as we go along. So tell us about your career, Amy, and your current role.
So first of all, it's a huge honor and delight to join you. This conversation, I think, has been a year in the making, and it's really amazing to have made it today, even if we're visual and virtual. And a little bit about me and my career. So as you mentioned, I'm an oncologist by background, and pretty much everything I've done is with the patient as the North Star. I started off as an oncologist and an academic. I was a professor of medicine at Duke, and there we were focusing on, could we line up observational research and then match it to clinical trials and then match it to clinical decision support so that we could quickly understand what works and for whom and when. And what we realized was we needed to build a system of interoperable data to do that. That was in the 2000s. And I led a program called the Learning Health Care Training Program. I led the Center for Learning Healthcare, as well as the Cancer Care Research Program. And all these programs really focused on how do we link up the data in the clinical trials. But there was a problem. And that problem was that we could only go so far as scientists and academics, and we needed the tech industry to get involved. And so in 2014, I completely changed my hat and jumped from the academia to the tech industry, where I joined a healthcare startup company called Flatiron Health, and really focused on how do we bring the best of software and product development to the space of cancer data, and really figure out how do we build really high quality clinical trial and real world data sets. And really I sort of thought about that all across the health tech industry. Figured out a lot in that space, but one of the things I realized is that practically speaking, it's also the policy side that drives things forward. So with the same North Star, I came to the FDA about 1.5 years ago now, really as Principal Deputy Commissioner, and I also took on the role of Acting Chief Information Officer, or CIO, where the goal is to advance precision medicine and patient-centered care, and also how do we use tech and data to be able to be as facile as possible in both medical innovation, but also understanding safety and effectiveness.
Okay. So you mentioned real-world evidence there. So could you touch on the strengths and weaknesses of the real-world evidence position we're in at the moment, and the opportunity you feel it will present in the future?
Sure. So let me step back and just kind of work through a couple of definitions to make sure we're all on the same page. As I think about real-world data and real-world evidence, I'm thinking about data that's sourced from areas other than the traditional clinical trial. Electronic health record data, administrative or financial claims data, also includes information from registries, from biobanks. These can be data sets that can be merged, such as electronic health record data plus biobank data. And we certainly have seen many different examples of real-world data sets brought to bear for COVID-19 and research questions today in the conference. So if we imagine that real-world data sets are sourced really from all across healthcare and help to address these questions, then what's different about real-world data and real-world evidence today? Well, you know, I come from a space of outcomes research and old-fashioned registries, and you know, as I think about the approach that we had to developing registries, we'd take a CRF, we would fill it out after having enrolled the patient in the registry, and then we would need to make a series of phone calls or something else across time to be able to collect data and understand longitudinal care. These days, one of the reasons that real-world data and real-world evidence is so different is that software and technology is bringing new capabilities. So we have the role of the electronic health record. We've seen lots of electronic health record data today. We have the capabilities from biosensors and digital trackers. We have the ability to have data that's cleaned in almost real time and professionally curated. We have the ability to link data sets, to think about maintenance of privacy. We have also the ability to apply new analytic capabilities such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, even blockchain to solve many of the problems. So the real-world data and real-world evidence of 2020 is a lot of the same math as it was in the old-fashioned registries, but it's a lot of novel capabilities with better data quality, better data recency, and the ability to bring together new data sets that's much different than it was in the past. So what are we going to do with all of that? Ultimately speaking, you know, we still have the same tasks at hand. We need to figure out, can the data sets answer real questions that are important to us? Are the data sets fit for purpose? Do we have the right analyses? Do we know what those use cases are? And when can we rely on real-world data? When can it help point the way to the best clinical trials to do? And how do we put this into action? And I think COVID-19 has taught us a lot about that.
And in response to COVID-19, the FDA has stimulated important work around a FDA Accelerator. So I wonder if you could just touch upon the hypothesis underlying that program, and also, secondly, are there any opportunities for partnership working internationally?
So as I mentioned, COVID-19 really set the stage to start to think about using real-world data and real-world evidence with urgency right now. We have so many questions to answer in such a short period of time that we can't possibly allocate all of our clinical trial resources to answer all of those questions as quickly as we need to. And so practically speaking at FDA, what we asked is, how can we make use of these high-quality data sets that exist in a number of places and be very thoughtful about putting them to task? Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge that we've seen all around us, whether it's Surgisphere in the Lancet or questions around the Veterans Affairs data and signals around mortality, we've seen all kinds of concerns about either irresponsible or inadequate application of real-world data to tasks in COVID-19. And so in the context of the Evidence Accelerator and FDA, which was already going on before those issues came up in the literature, we had a number of activities going on. So the first was to say that if we're going to bring real-world data to bear in the context of COVID-19, we need the space working together to figure out fit-for-purpose data, to cross-check each other and develop the right methods, to develop transparent approaches complete with peer review. And so the Evidence Accelerator is a large community of data holders as well as analytic teams working together to answer a series of curated questions in a consistent fashion. So the Evidence Accelerator is a community. It's run by the Reagan-Udall Foundation and Friends of Cancer Research with the FDA in partnership. And we have a number of tools that then this community uses to try and advance the space of real-world data for COVID-19. Those tools include a list of prioritized questions that we're all working on together, such as, what's the natural history of COVID-19? What treatments are patients receiving? And can we understand information about treatment impacts, such as effectiveness and safety? It's questions such as, can we create benchmarks, for example, for convalescent plasma programs? And do we understand the performance of diagnostic tests like PCR and serology? So these are the kinds of questions the Evidence Accelerator has prioritized. The second set of tools are common data elements and a set of translation tables that allow us to translate between different common data models so that we can bring the tools of informatics to bear within the context of this real-world data space as quickly as possible. The third thing is master protocols where multiple groups are answering the same research questions simultaneously so that we can look at replicability of findings, convergence of findings, as well as when is it differences in the underlying data sets or poor methods that lead to differing results. We also have a series of mechanisms called lab meetings for real-time peer review and communication of findings, and work streams such as groups who are working on therapeutics, groups that are working on diagnostics, groups that are working on translational issues such as oncology, the cancer patient with COVID-19. And so this is a community that is actively working. It's been going on for about 2 months, and we have 3 to 4 meetings per week in these different collaborative frameworks. And your question was, can others be involved? And in fact, this community is growing quickly, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to partner directly with HDR UK and the UK community as a first part of an international collaboration. And also what I anticipate is that we'll see further collaboration both in the United States and internationally over the next couple of weeks and months, because we've got a lot of work to do together.
Okay, well, we've got 280 people listening, so there's 280 new members for you. So
ready to go.
Okay. Now, we also touched upon, and I noticed 1 or 2 questions in the Q&A around, the Lancet and the New England Journal for once had something in common, that they both retracted papers on hydroxychloroquine. So what can we learn about that? Because we talk about learning health systems. So what can we learn from that episode?
I think we can learn a lot. I'm going to divide this into 2 different categories. I think the first thing that we can learn is that, practically speaking, we need to be honest with ourselves that this work is hard and these methods are hard. There's no push button magical solution that the data sets are there and all we have to do is push a little button and eureka, we've got all the findings. That in fact, we need to learn how to do appropriate identification of cases and cohorts. We need to figure out what are the right covariates to include in our models, for example, with propensity score matching. We need to understand what are the endpoints and how to measure them and understand them in a consistent way across data sets and results. These methodological issues in the context of real-world data for COVID-19 should not be dismissed as easy. And in fact, they're going to be done very differently by different groups. And we need to understand how different groups are doing their work, standardize on best approaches, and also be very transparent about who's using what approach. The other thing in the methods area is we need to be very consistent about understanding the features and details of the underlying data sets, and we have to have transparent ways of describing that as well. So that's one set of things that I think we can learn from the hydroxychloroquine story if we didn't already know that before. So I think we knew that, we just needed to be reminded. The second thing that I think we can learn from the hydroxychloroquine story is a bit more hopeful and forward-leaning. And that's that with new data, with peer review, with questions and transparency and learning, we can update our understanding and make new choices. So sometimes the choices that we need to make are with only the best available information we have at the moment in time, but that new information occurs later. So for example, we have small clinical trials that suggest a direction, but over time we develop larger clinical trials as well as multiple consistent findings from observational data sets that ask us to reconsider our initial decision. We do this in clinical medicine all the time. And I think the hydroxychloroquine study and series of events reminds us that that is a practical reality, that especially in times like COVID-19, where we have the great urgency and need to make early decisions, we also have the responsibility to update our decisions when new findings come about. And I actually think that's a hopeful part of the hydroxychloroquine story.
Okay. And would you like to comment on the news about dexamethasone today? Because that's, we heard Martin at 12 o'clock and it was embargoed till 1 o'clock. So what are your thoughts about the dexamethasone story?
So first of all, well done. I just want to say, I think that it's a hopeful story that adds a new treatment to our toolbox for COVID-19. And one of the other hopeful aspects of this story is a treatment that we know how to use, that we have confident clinical hands to which we can actually be able to use this within the context of the patient with COVID-19. And indeed, these were patients, as I understand it, who were in the hospitalized setting for COVID-19. So we need to make sure that we understand the treatment and the appropriate clinical setting. So these are people who have severe enough disease to need oxygen and or a ventilator. And we need to understand when prescribing dexamethasone, how do we think about any potential downstream effects, such as hyperglycemia and other issues when we prescribe steroids. That being said, a couple of other aspects about this that make me hopeful. So another part of the story is the recovery trial itself, a platform trial. It's really a real-world data study that's highly generalizable, that was easy to conduct in many different clinics and settings, or actually really hospitals and settings around the UK and in greater areas, and actually helps to show the way that platform trials like this are doable and doable with expediency. And so I think that's also an important part of the story. And then finally, it starts to set the path of now asking, essentially, how do we add together various treatments as we think about the management of patients with COVID-19? Right.
Okay, now you're kindly giving your time to act as a sort of critical friend to us. So what do you sense is the UK's biggest global opportunity in health data science? A sort of mini SWOT analysis of where we need to focus.
Yeah, so I see a lot of opportunities. So first of all, you've got a large and vibrant community, and you've got a community where not only do you have many experts working now, but you're building the future. So one global opportunity is to make sure that you're continuing to build the future of people. I see another global opportunity in HDR UK as it relates to appending biological data with clinical data, so that you essentially get clinical annotation of biological information, and it allows you to run forward more quickly in understanding both essentially underlying mechanisms of disease, as well as biological plausibility and sort of direction finding on the discovery and early clinical development side. And personally, I see that as a great area of opportunity. The other thing, that I noticed as I was watching different talks today is there's an opportunity within the context of HDR UK to really think of a very efficient translation from discovery to clinical implementation. The ability to have HDR UK sitting up next to, for example, GP networks means that you really have that sort of soup to nuts set of learning healthcare capabilities ready for you. And I see that as also a huge UK opportunity, but practically speaking, a demonstration activity for the whole world.
Okay, now we're flooded with questions. Are you comfortable if we ask one or two questions from the audience? I know and there's a few international contributors here. So Wen Hua Li, who provides great leadership for one of our digital health research hubs in eye disease. Very good question. In the very near future, we will see an explosion of health data generated outside the healthcare sector, like sensors, trackers. How will the FDA future-proof this so that in terms of regulation, we are flexible enough to bring those data assets into the process?
Wow, so this is a really important question. And I think that the future-proofing comes in several different directions. The first is that we need to learn how to use them and have confidence in using them. And so one aspect of future-proofing is both the research and activities that are happening outside of FDA, as well as FDA doing some of its own research in understanding the capabilities of these data sets and their limitations, so that as regulators, we're able to have confident conversations that both think about when data sets are fit for purpose and can provide opportunity, but also how do we need to think about the limitations here. So that's one way we future-proof, is doing our own science in partnership with the science that you do. The second way that we future-proof FDA, as the CIO, I lead something called the Technology Modernization Action Plan. And within the context of how we become a more modern FDA, both in our facile use of technology, but also our ability to bring in data quickly into the FDA, that is actually another way that we're future-proofing the FDA so that we're able to support data exchange, the evaluation of these kind of data sets, and also the housing and support of these data sets in an efficient fashion as possible. So that's another part of future-proofing. A third part of the future-proofing is actually sort of on the regulatory development side. So practically speaking, some of these products are actually medical products that we review. So for example, when it is software embedded within the context of a medical device. So a sensor that's now a part of a device that's going to be used to make medical judgments or to provide medical care for a patient. And we not only use our traditional device development and approval pathways, but we also have a pilot program where we're looking at whether or not we can essentially pre-credential companies who are developing software products and then also develop mechanisms to continuously evaluate those software products across time. And so we're essentially piloting new flexible regulatory pathways that will allow us to continuously evaluate, for example, software that's updating continuously across time, so that we can be as facile as some of these software solutions that are coming forward.
And I think Jim Hendel has put that in, who you'll probably know as a friend from North America. So this is this innovative regulatory approach to the modification of machine learning based software. Is that? Could you tell us, because my sort of thoughts on this is that you're probably ahead of us in terms of how you look at algorithms and regulate them. Could you just talk us through the stepwise approach you're taking?
So first of all, let me just hit on how I think about artificial intelligence and machine learning writ large from an agency perspective. So practically speaking, I'm going to use the language of artificial intelligence or AI as a catch-all phrase for artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, natural language processing, and sort of complex computational approaches. So that capability set. And as FDA, I think about AI in 3 different ways. There's artificial intelligence-based solutions, machine learning, for example, embedded in products that we directly regulate. This is the insulin pump, which also has a full loop determination using algorithms as to whether or not to adjust the insulin for a child, for example. Those are AI-based solutions that we regulate. The second is what I call FDA adjacent AI solutions. These are AI solutions that aren't directly regulated by us, but very relevant to the overall space of data and life sciences. And this, for example, is AI as a solution to help curate data sets. And the third are AI solutions that we use inside the agency, which help us be more facile in our work, but also get more, develop more expertise in the kinds of solutions that we also regulate. So now to focus on AI solutions that we regulate, practically speaking, we have a pilot program called the pre-certification program, which is in pilot, and it essentially is for companies that agree to participate, have several features. One of those features is to pre-certify or pre-evaluate companies to ensure that they have the appropriate software development controls in place. So essentially good software practice, you can imagine, that ensures that they are developing software products in a way that would be consistent across the industry and that we as FDA can understand. We also then evaluate the product itself. And then a third important feature is that we acknowledge that AI algorithms are going to update across time, but the output and the expected performance of the device should stay stable or get better. And that there's going to be a series of evaluations for that device across time using a preset set of outcome measures to understand if the device is continuing to perform as we'd expect, even when the algorithms are updating. That program is again under evaluation, but the idea is to develop these novel regulatory pathways that allow us to keep pace with the innovation.
Right. Okay. So let's move now. There's a couple of questions which relate to clinical effectiveness and value. We haven't talked about money, but in the UK we spend, I think it's 14% of the healthcare budget on pharmaceuticals, therapeutics. So Caps put in a good question. Can you imagine a day where drug costs reimbursement is based on real world outcomes as measured from large scale patient data sets?
So the question is, can I imagine a day? I'm a good palliative care doctor, so, and my good palliative medicine hat, so I always imagine that asking the question, would I be surprised if there was a day when we had real world outcomes informing the cost of medicines? And no, I wouldn't be surprised. So yes, I can imagine that. Do I know the features of what it would look like, how long it would take to get there, or exactly which countries within which this would be? I'm not quite sure, but practically speaking, I think that as I think about the performance of drugs, so whether these are drug interventions or device interventions, as I think about the performance, I think about the alignment with individual patient features and patient values. And I think about the ability to use data that accumulates across time to better focus our medical products to the people who need them most, and to better define how well they're performing for those patients, as well as essentially what that means against other trade-offs. We're going to have more and more information that will help to define that across time. And I do see that that's a possibility. I also think that the real-world data sets of today and tomorrow are becoming so much better in quality that we will be able to have more reliance on them to do a series of tasks potentially into the future that can be as meaningful as this.
So, and I'm going to ask you to imagine another day, because an anonymous attendee has asked us, a colleague, if we get better at real-world data, how willing will the FDA be to use those data to remove or reverse approvals for drugs that actually don't appear to work in the real world?
So, again, this is a question that's sort of asking me to use my crystal ball and plan the future. So let me kind of start think about this and answer it a little bit differently. So the 21st Century Cures Act, the United States, which was passed into law in December of 2016, compelled the FDA to explore the use of real-world data and real-world evidence, and to do so in the context of a series of use cases. So the use of real-world data and real-world evidence for evaluation of post-marketing commitments and requirements, as well as for label expansions or secondary indications. And so practically speaking, in response to that, in the 21st Century Cures Act, FDA is exploring those kinds of use cases. And those kinds of use cases of using real-world data, for example, for long-term evaluation of safety, does mean that there is potentially a story where real-world data then helps us make a decision to curb the use of a drug within the context of safety, and perhaps that also means within the context of effectiveness. I think that you saw probably yesterday that we rescinded the emergency use authorization for hydroxychloroquine in the United States. And one way you can think about that is the recovery trial, which is a pragmatic real-world data study, provided compelling information that then shifts understanding of how a drug is performing. How much will that translate into times non-COVID? I can't really say, and I don't have the crystal ball for it, but I think we're learning a lot about when we can have confidence and when we can't.
Okay, and then a final question from Richard Ballarand. Are there plans to better integrate the work of the FDA with that of its international counterparts in this new collaborative spirit?
So, I hope we've been trying to integrate the work of the FDA and international counterparts for a long time now. I think you alluded to at the beginning, I did my PhD in Australia, and certainly learned to appreciate not only my international colleagues, but really clinical evidence development from an Australian and international perspective then. And I see, as I've come to the FDA, we are a member of many different collaborative activities, ICMRA, and other relationships. And we really value the harmonization. We really value the conversations. And I think you're going to just see that continue with even more pace.
Yeah, and I can see you've got a map of the world behind you, which seems to completely confirm that view. So, Amy, we're out of time. We could have run this for another 2 hours, but the embers of the fire are dying down. So can I thank you? We should give you a round of applause, just to, I'm sure everybody is. Can I thank you for giving up your time? We know how busy you are, but your support, your advice, and your leadership in this space is greatly appreciated. So from everyone in the UK, a huge thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you in person in Abernethy. Okay, so thank you. So I now have the pleasure, we have two other pieces of very important business. Firstly, we have a prize giving. And as you know, we had 3 prizes to give away today, so our annual awards. So first of all, I would like to pass over to Rona, who's going to tell us about the best lightning talk of the day.
Thank you. So yes, earlier we had the Early Career Researchers Lightning Talk session, which was excellent. Very good job with all of those presenting. And the most thought-provoking early career research talk was voted for by all of the attendees of the session. And so I would like to congratulate Alvina Lay for her talk. Very well done. You were voted the most thought-provoking early career lightning talk, and I believe there is a very nice prize that goes along with that. So yeah, congratulations and well done to all of them. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Rona. And we'll send the question to the Prime Minister. It was a great title. So now we'll move on to Anne-Marie Corriat, and thank you for convening the panel, Anne-Marie. Team of the Year.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me. It's been an exciting and really inspiring day, and I just wanted to say thank you to Melissa Lewis-Brown for organising, and for Jaya Chaturvedi and Anthony Shooter, who were my co-panellists. We met a couple of times and were super impressed by 21 applications in total, an amazing breadth of work, all collaborative, very engaged teams. And I'm afraid we used our artistic licence a little bit, because we found it so super hard. We have one overall winner, but we have, because of the number of really impressive entries for COVID related activities, we have one additional COVID winner. And just to really extend our artistic license, we had two that we thought should be highly commended. So very quickly then, highly commended were Ruth Blackburn for the HDR UK Early Career Committee work, and Rebecca Bandayan for the HDR UK National Text Analytics Project team. Our COVID nomination additional winner was Amitava Banerjee for the work on the London COVID-19 response, a super excellent diverse team developing prototype online risk calculators. And our overall winner, we're delighted to say, was John Bradley, who led the HDR UK Sprint project in rare diseases. Even more impressive, because what they've done in terms of technical architecture would have been hard between 2 hospitals, let alone 5 NHS trusts. And this really was only made possible by the cohesive and inclusive team that they had. So congratulations to everybody. The 2 winners will receive the trophy and some training, and the rest will have cases written up on the HDR UK website. So congratulations everybody, and thank you.
And well done, all the teams, and thank you, Anne-Marie, and thank you for blowing our prize fund budget by awarding 4 prizes.
1 trophy.
One trophy. Okay, and lastly, over to James, which is Impact of the Year.
Thank you, Andrew. And firstly, thank you to all the applications for this prize. We had the panel and myself, Angela Coulter, Fatima Tarabi, had great fun and found it incredibly interesting to scrutinise the applications. We have a shortlist, which I think is hopefully on the next slide. It is, here we are. So 3 applications that we felt were all incredibly strong. And from this list, I would like to say that 2 were highly commended. Those were the applications led by Mark Lawler and his team, and the application led by Rosalind Ego and her team, which means that we have 1 winner, a red letter day for Amitava Banerjee and her team on the model that estimates excess deaths from COVID-19 were our winner. The reason that we felt that this was particularly strong was because of the huge influence that the application and the work has had on COVID policy. It's made the greatest impact on policy of all the nominations. And that impact goes well beyond academia. And I can tell you, as a politician with some involvement in COVID response, it's been enormously influential in policy making. It aligns very closely with the values and mission of HDR UK, and a great example of team science. And not least, actually influencing one of the other models and pieces of work that also made our highly commended list. So many congratulations to Amitava and her team, and thank you very much indeed for a superb piece of work. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Rona, Anne-Marie, and James for leading the selection process. So, and just to say thank you to everyone. As I said earlier, the first case of COVID-19 in the UK was on the 31st of January in York, and all this work we've seen today has been delivered since that date. So on that note, I will step back and invite my friend and colleague Caroline, who's Chief Executive, to conclude the day. So Caroline.
Thank you, Andrew. Wow, what an amazing day, and what a task I have now to summarize it all. So thank you all for a really extraordinary day, which has showcased the breadth, the power, and the scale of health data science to enable discoveries that improve people's lives. So for those who were involved last year, I'll ask you to cast your minds back to at last year's HDR UK conference. We had about 200 attendees. We met in person in Cambridge, and the theme was around team science. Little did we predict at that point in time that the year, in a year's time, would have over 900 people signed up for a wholly virtual online conference about health data science in the COVID-19 era. So COVID has been an awful global experience, with the latest figures today from the UK showing 41,736 deaths in the UK associated with COVID. And our hearts go out to anyone and everyone whose families and colleagues have been directly affected by it. But today has also shown that health data science has clearly become one of the most important tools in the COVID response. And collectively, the health data science community has learned and achieved a lot, and that really has been shown through the presentations and activities through today. So first of all, one of the first things that clearly jumps out is we're already making important discoveries right now through health data science. Today's announcement from the recovery trial has shown that dexamethasone significantly reduces the risk of dying from COVID, is one of the most positive breakthroughs in COVID. And as Amy Abernathy just said just now, well done. This adds a really a new treatment to our toolbox. In addition, we've kind of learned about lessons from other countries and other sectors. So YY from Singapore, Andreas from Germany, Effie from Switzerland, and Amy Summary just now from the US. And YY highlighted the important differences in national context, which I think is important for us to be bearing in mind as we're thinking about health data science, be it historical, social, political, or cultural. And as Amy just highlighted, collaboration internationally is only going to become increasingly more important. There's also been a very strong message today through the need for shared infrastructure around data. And I think there's a nice quote from Paul Clark around we need to be the importance of building tools in peacetime for future battles. So there were messages associated with this around the value of pragmatic, secure and efficient approaches using trusted research environments, which have been beautifully shown by Open Safely and also by the COVID Symptom Tracker and Cell Data Bank. Another quote from Paul Clark from Ocado is saying, ontologies and standards, no one owns them, everyone uses them. So really needing to invest in those. And Amy also saying that this work is hard, these methods are hard, and we need to be transparent about who's doing it and who's doing what. And a lovely quote also from Steve Kern about how we need to bridge an archipelago of data islands. So that really important about the shared infrastructure around data. There were also messages around, and very timely messages, given the current climate and environment, around the importance of diversity and representativeness in data. Indra Joshi and others brought that out in the data discussions this morning. And also about the timeliness of data. It's shown that from across NHS settings by Jeff Hall, Liz Sapie, Ben Goldacre, and just saying it's no longer okay to be drawing on insights from data of 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I think even Jeff was saying, or even 2 years ago. It really does need to be current and near real-time data. Angela Coulter, Phil Booth and others mentioned today in the discussions on public trust that while it's too early to tell whether public attitudes on data usage will change as a result of COVID, public trust does remain essential. So even in these urgent rush times, it's even more important that we're considering that. And transparency as to what data is being used for, what purposes, by whom, are really important. Technology can help us, but we also need to be communicating what decisions are being made and why they're being made. So really important lessons and things that have come out and insights from today. But also there's been some real celebrations today as well around congratulations to the award winners for the Lightning Talks, the Team of the Year, the Impact of the Year. So Alvina Lay, John Bradley's Rare Disease team, and Amy Banerjee. So all fantastic work done by them, but they're just representing a huge amount of other work. And so huge thank yous to the, I think it's 58 people who are speakers and chairs from across the whole of the data research community today. I won't take you through all 58 names, so I'll be here for a while, but we've got representatives from international, from national representation. Lovely, I think everyone was blown away by the early researcher talks and the breadth of activities they've been working on. Representatives from industry, NHS, academia, charities and government, really illustrating the breadth of which health data science reaches. Thank you also, a very big thank you to Fran, Alice, Melissa, Ros and Andrew for putting together such a fabulous day for all of us and pivoting the conference so effectively to our new circumstances. We're always going to open to feedback and we'll be sharing feedback on the channel so you can provide us, let us know what you thought of today and how we can actually learn and make it continue better improved as we go forward. And a couple of things I just want to finish on. So first of all was a really nice quote from a tweet from Tim Frayling from Exeter, who said today, saying, listening to the astonishing quality and quantity of data-driven analysis performed using the UK's data resources addressing the COVID question at the HDR UK meeting, something the UK can be proud of. And I think the final quote, though, I think goes to Patrick Vallance, which is effectively, there's still so much we don't know about COVID. We don't know who gets it, where they get it from, why some more than others. And so there's so much more we can be done for health data science. We really look forward to working together with all of you and with others who come on board in the future working on health data science. So we're really achieving and learning even more in the year ahead. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm delighted to close today's conference.